Okay. Well, welcome. This is being recorded. This is session one overview and getting started for Pet Tutor, a webinar. My name's Wes Anderson. I'm the president for Smart Animal Training Systems. We're the folks that make and distribute Pet Tutor. I want to thank everyone online. I think most folks are owners. Maybe you've got some users, people that are using Pet Tutor that someone else has in their shelter or their training facility. But we'd like to welcome you all here. I'm going to take a break as we kind of go along and see if you have any questions. So without further ado, I want to start off just thanking everyone. You know, we would be nowhere without you guys. We're really so excited by the feedback we're getting. It's just absolutely amazing to me how wonderful people are at sharing what they what the Pet Tutor's done for them and how they like it. And you know, it's been a dream but we're not done. We're still moving forward, and we're going to add more features and capabilities. But we really want to thank all of you for what you've done to help us get through this. About a little over a first year now that we've been on the market with Pet Tutor Pro. So I want to thank everyone here for your help and support and encouragement. The agenda for the screen. Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen now? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for confirming that. I think something must have happened. Somehow it got switched to somebody else temporarily. Pardon that technical issue. So let me see if I can get my screen back up. So I should be sharing this now. Looks good now. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. So just to get back to where we were, again, I want to welcome everyone. We're going to have a quick little prize for a fun Pet Tutor fact. We're going to do some Q&A along the way, more later on, and then kind of a glimpse into where we're headed in the future, because we do have some plans for some new product features in the future that I want to make you guys aware of. And kind of break this into sort of operations and applications along the way. So first question is, what is the material the Pet Tutor is made of? And plastic, of course, is the blue tube now is made of a very special type of plastic. Does anyone know what that is? I'll take like an instant message, the first person that gives me either the brand name, there is a brand name for that plastic, or category. So I'm just going to give you about a minute, 30 seconds here to answer. And while I'm on that, you know, we made some very conscious decisions along the way about the materials that are in Pet Tutor. It was designed to be very durable. Blue plastic. Thank you, Amanda. Yes, we're not short of humor here at Smart Animal Training Systems. So tough plastic, yes. All right, I'm not seeing any answers, so it's a very special type of plastic. I'll just give you a quick hint. This plastic has also been shown on various videos to be shot with bullets, not Pet Tutor, but this particular material, because it's so durable. And tick, 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 no answers. Okay, so we'll give you another shot probably on the users group. Bulletproof, tough plastic. Thank you, Jennifer. It is Lexan, and it is also known as polycarbonate is the general category. And the reason that was chosen is it's extremely durable, and if it were to break, it doesn't shatter like cheaper acrylic type plastics that are actually made in some pet products, which can break into like shards. This will crinkle more like aluminum foil. But we've not had any examples of any of the feeder tubes themselves having a problem. They hold up extremely well. So that's Lexan or polycarbonate, and it's a food safe material. Can be washed in the not getting the audio. Amanda, are you still getting the audio? Someone said they couldn't hear it. Okay. Yep. So I'm going to keep moving along. Sorry if you lost the audio. It could be your connection. You could also call in on the phone, and you'll find that information on the user group if you're having trouble with the audio. Well, of course, you wouldn't be able to hear me, would you? So I'm just going to keep moving along. First of all, there are several resources for you if you have questions and need answers. The first one, if you're having a question or technical difficulty, don't post those. We ask that you not post those on the Facebook page because we don't really monitor it that closely. We do monitor our support line, and we get pinged if a call comes in right away on the support line. It also logs a ticket, and that helps us track if you have a question or an issue come up. We can track that and see if your question has been answered, and that way you don't get lost in the system. So we've had people, and we'll try to answer in any place, but we're really trying to get folks to start using the support line more. So Amanda said, just make sure that your little telephone is not muted, whoever might be having audio trouble. So the support line, that's really your first stop if you're having some questions or difficulties setting up or anywhere along the line. We also have a phone line, which you'll find on the website. Now, the user group is an incredibly rich resource. We've got lots of people with tons and tons of training experience in a variety of areas. And so tips, sharing, applications, it's a great place to go to get a quick answer. The folks there have just been wonderful since we just recently, the user group hasn't been going for very long, but we've really got some good participation. It is a closed group, which means the discussions cannot be seen by anyone outside the group on Facebook. So, and this is only open to Pet Tutor owners and those that are using the system that have been invited. So it's by invitation only. If you do have a pet tutor and you want to invite someone, just let me know or make a request on Facebook, and we'll add those. Or you can add them. Sometimes Facebook will show me if the person that's being invited has been invited by a pet tutor owner. But that is so that's the Facebook group. And if you want to invite someone, again, just let us know. We also have videos on YouTube. So those are all the resources you can turn to for help and support and some really interesting application stuff, especially on the YouTube group there, or I'm sorry, Facebook. And this just a couple of screenshots of what those look like. If you go to the support page, over on the right-hand side where it says contact, that is really the place to go if you want to, this contact button right here. That's the place you want to go if you file a support ticket. And sometimes often when you type something in, it'll pop up. It's been asked before and there's an answer. So, try that too. You might get your answer right away, right on the support page. But that's where you file a ticket. The links for the software are down here. If you're just getting your pet tutor, we have tutorial links here. Be sure and register your product once you get it in this. You click on this form, and then the user manual is at this link up at the top. So those are the two couple of key resources, the support page. And then down here is the Facebook group. And tonight I'm going to go through some of the resources that are right there on the users group. There are several files that are very helpful. Some common questions that come up, you'll find the answers in these files. So just a quick review, because I found many times folks who get a pet tutor don't realize all the features that are in it, and and things that it can do. The modes of operation, there's the basic manual mode, which is just push the remote button and it fires a treat remotely. But then you get into the advanced modes, which are timed intervals, and there's really some fancy stuff that can be done with the timed intervals. If you have the software, you can make lots of different changes in the intervals. So you can add, we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, add variation and have it automatically increase. Sound triggers, you can trigger by your voice, or we've got a special clicker-only mode. And the clicker-only mode it's very sensitive to the double click of a clicker. It will listen for that particular double click and not be as sensitive to other sounds in the environment. So some folks don't realize you've got two types of sound triggers. And then, of course, the auto bark reduction. So the unit can go into a programmed mode and listen for a bark and withhold treats during bark. Tilt Sense has been real popular. You can put that in games, use it for hands-free work. And then all the mounting options, floor mount, which has the bowl and then the chase feed out the back, a crate mount, wall mount, and hanging mount. Now I'm going to go into some of just kind of the care and feeding of the Pet Tutor. And that starts with the feeder. And you have here a cartoon just kind of listing the various parts of the feeder. So we've got the floor base, and then here's the feeder itself. The hopper, I call it, is where all the food goes in. So if you see it referred to, that's where the hopper is. There is a little indicator light every time you trigger the Pet Tutor. That was put in there specifically for deaf dogs and hearing impaired people. So we really tried to think about all the different needs of dogs and people that will be using the system. So there's a little light there that flashes every time the treat's dispensed. I'm going to go through the buttons on the side, and the indicators, the status indicators, and we'll take a look at the inside of the unit tonight as well. So diving right into looking at some of the interior of the feeder. This comes with the feeder. You'll see this AC adapter. Whoops, sorry. You'll see the AC adapter is the way we provide alternative power. And I want to point that out. The AC adapter, and I saw somebody ask about mice versus ants. So I'll explain that in just a minute. The AC adapter does not charge the battery. Some people have been confused that we have a rechargeable battery in the feeder. We do have a rechargeable battery. It's in the remote, not in the feeder. So when you plug it into the AC, it only switches out the batteries that's in the feeder. So it'll say it won't be draining your feeder battery, but it doesn't charge them either. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. So AC adapter is just for an alternative source. If you have to run for a long time, like run all day, it'll save the batteries, not charge them. Over to the far left, then I'm going to look at the feeder pod in more detail on the next slide. On the left here, you have the brush assembly, and I pointed out here, dishwasher safe, but not mouse safe. And I mean mice. Do not leave it on in an area where a mouse is around. Now, you may not, especially if you've got it on the floor. Probably isn't a problem if you've got it on a crate mount or if you've got it suspended in the air. But if it's down on the floor, this hole has been designed to be big enough to get some fairly large treats. And we found out that it's also big enough for a mouse to crawl up. And they will chew their way. They love these bristles because they're just loaded with good dog food. We've had some people complain that their brushes were wearing out. I honestly, from the day that we launched since 2013, we still have brush assemblies that are being used all the time, and they're not wearing out. So I've never seen, if properly treated, clean it occasionally, and that's about all, just soap and water. And they will last a long, long time unless they encounter a mouse. And the telltale sign is you get a little notch right here where the brushes are. So be sure and keep your unit away from mice, and you'll be okay. And you can do that by just blocking it. You can take it off the floor mount or twist it when you're not using it, or get rid of your mice. Get a cat. Okay, let's go into the the feeder pod itself now, and I'll talk about some of the parts of that and point out a couple of the maintenance areas. This top set here is the hopper low infrared detector. So once the kibble starts getting below this detector up on the top, there'll be a little red light on the status light on the side that'll go red when you try to feed, when you give it a feed command. It won't stop. It's just saying, hey, I'm getting low. So you'll want to be ready to put more kibble in when you start getting that light low. The plate itself, we want to wipe the plate off with a dry cloth. I'd say damp, but I'm really careful about saying, because everyone has a different opinion what damp is, but you don't want any water or detergent on that unit. So if you use a damp cloth, I mean super damp, no water, no extra water at all with that. The other set of infrared detectors is down at the bottom. That's the critical set. And those, there's a light beam that is sent out from two of those. And then there's another sensor that detects how much light comes back. And so we reflect light off the kibble, treats, whatever it is it's passing through, passing over this detector. And that's how we know when to stop the brushes. And so you might guess if you get too much kibble, look over here in the left-hand corner, you see all that buildup, the kibble dust. That needs to be periodically cleaned out. You just take you can take an old toothbrush or a dry cloth and just wipe that kibble debris away, and you should be good. That you don't have to do that. Some kibble that doesn't have much dust or oil will go a long time, but just kind of keep an eye on it and see how much buildup you're getting there. If you start getting you're trying to dispense treats and they're not coming out, or you're getting it just keeps going, just keeps firing treats out, most likely you've got something that's blocking these detectors down here, and it's usually like kibble dust. So those are the keys for the feeder pod, and this is the feeder pod itself. People that are getting the upgrades, when we ask you to send it in for the Bluetooth upgrade, this is really all you need to send in. We just add some electronics inside the feeder pod. I'm going to pause there. Any questions from anyone about what we covered so far about the feeder or the feeder pod itself? Okay. How do you know if your pod needs an upgrade? Oh, okay, good question. And I don't know if upgrade is the right word because it's just an alternative way to control the feeder. The upgrade package that we're adding now is Bluetooth Low Energy, Bluetooth 4.0 Low Energy. It's a brand new technology that's going like gangbusters in the consumer electronics world. It's a standard, industry standard way to communicate between smart devices and sensors in homes and fitness monitors. I mean, that it's very common technology. We're now adding that to Pet Tutor so that Pet Tutor can talk to smartphones and tablets, and you can run it from an app. So we have an app that is now in the Apple Store. And you can control, I'll show you at the end of this discussion an example of what you can do with Bluetooth. So it extends the capability. If you get the upgrade, it has absolutely no effect on any of the Pet Tutor Pro features. The remote works the same way it always does. You can still use your laptop programs. No change in the mechanical system. It's just some electronics that we add to the feeder that gives it that Bluetooth capability. So if you have a smartphone and you want to use the smartphone to control the feeder, that's when you would opt to get the upgrade. One advantage of that is you can control many feeders at once, and it's not the only advantage, but that's just one example of how you can use the Bluetooth. So this list that I have up now is a list of the files that you're going to find on the site. on the Facebook page. And I'm going to go through those in just a minute, but I wanted to zoom in. I did a little quick zoom in on the feeder. Now I'm going to switch and go to the remote and just talk about the features that are on the remote. You'll see the 3 buttons. Those were designed so that one remote could control up to 3 feeders. So if you had 3 feeders, you have to pair them to each one. It comes factory. Button 1 is paired to the feeder. Most folks will get it paired to one of the feeders, and then you can add a second or a third feeder to a remote. There's a little LED status light in the upper left-hand corner here. And depending upon how the number of flashes, you're either in manual mode, which is just push the button and get a treat, or you're in one of the advanced modes like the timed interval dispense or sound trigger or tilt. And so that's how that status light is used. While I'm here, I'm going to make a comment about the status light too. Unfortunately, because of some federal regulations, I understand there have been some changes to what the battery makers have to do, and those internal changes have affected our ability to tell when the battery is charged or not charged. And so if you find in the manual to look at the light color and tell when the battery is charged or not, you can't do that anymore. So I apologize. The internal change dictated, my understanding was there's some new regulation somewhere that caused the battery manufacturer to change something internal to the battery. So the best thing that you can do, and I'm going to talk about this before, is just give it a good charge overnight, and you're probably good to go. So that's the status light. Over here is the microphone, and again, that's where the remote senses the sound trigger from your voice, from a clicker, or it's used for the bark detection. And you may not notice it, but under one of the little under the paw pad, that's where our speaker is. So when you hear a beep coming from the remote, that's where it's at. Now, it's very tiny and it's hidden underneath that black paw, so you'd hardly even know that it's there, but that's the speaker. And a quick comment about the speaker, we've had people ask, the speaker is always off in any of the advanced modes, so it does not beep if it's doing time dispense, if it's in sound trigger mode, or if it's in tilt mode. So the speaker is not active, and you can't make it active in those modes. On the flip side of that, it's always on in manual mode. So if you wanted to trigger the feeder silently, you would go into an automatic mode that you could do that. The sound trigger wouldn't make sense, but you could do it in like the tilt mode and then just tilt instead of pushing the button, and that would fire the feeder. So that'd be one approach to triggering the feeder without getting a beep from the remote itself. In the middle picture here, you see the 2 connectors underneath the flap. One is a USB plug. That uses just a standard micro USB. Your typical everyday phone chargers are quite sufficient for that. So if you have just a regular phone charger, micro USB, it'll probably work just fine. I charge most of my remotes with just whatever I can find handy around the house. The audio plug, we don't use that anymore. That was in a much earlier version of Pet Tutor Pro, and we opted not to go forward with that, but you'll still find that connection in the remote. So just ignore it. You don't need it anymore. Likewise, you don't need the audio plug for that. And on the back then is this clip. You can clip it onto your shirt pocket if you wanted to do hands-free work and use the voice trigger. So that takes care of the just sort of the mechanics of what the remote looks like. Some tips about using the remote, charging it. You do want, first time especially, give it a good charge overnight. 8 to 10 hours would be fine. Don't worry about the color of the light. I've never had a case where it just an overnight charge didn't do the trick. So just give it a good overnight charge. Now this is the second point here is really important. And this has caused more problems than I can count here with confusion. You have to press button 1 to re-enable the sleep timer. And the sleep timer on the remote will help save the rechargeable battery a long time. So on a charge, it'll make the charge last quite a while. But it's disabled when it's charging. So it doesn't go to sleep. But when you unplug it, so when you pull the USB charger out of the connector on the remote, press button 1, just a quick single press, and that'll restart the sleep timer. And in 3 minutes, it'll go back to sleep again. If you don't do that, the remote stays on, and it'll look like it's not keeping a charge. That's always been the case if someone hasn't pressed button 1. So press button 1 when you unplug it, and just a single quick press that just tells it to re-enable the sleep timer. Don't worry about the LED. I've talked about that. Don't always plug it in all the time. So every day, treat it like your cell phone battery. That's kind of the good care and feeding tips on cell phones, mobile phones, smartphones. You don't want to have those rechargeable batteries on a charge all the time. Typically, you want to charge them up and then use them until they're fairly far down on the discharge. So I'll usually charge them up and use them until it looks like they've run out of juice, and I'll put them on the charger again. A typical charge, and several customers have told us that they'll last about 2 weeks in typical applications. It's going to vary by how you're using it, but you should certainly get several days or a week, even if you're using it a lot. So if you're only getting a few hours, press button 1. So that's probably what's going on. It'll last about 9 hours of constant on operation on a charge. But for most training applications, you don't need 9 hours of constant on time. So about 2 weeks on a charge should be okay. Do the batteries themselves ever need to be replaced? Yes, Sarah, they do. I read the specs on this. Don't hold me to this, but I've read, it's could be hundreds of times, or about a year and a half. It's kind of like a cell phone. They'll last about a year and a half or 2 years, and then they just wear out, or a few hundred charges. So those rechargeable batteries do need replacing. Some of our oldest units are just starting to need some batteries replaced. It's a whole lot easier to send those back to us, and we have a replacement package. We can do that. Yeah, we really want to do the replacing. It's not a good idea to have you going into the remote. So you need, if it's not keeping a charge or it seems to be dead, that's probably the rechargeable battery. And again, if you just got your Pet Tutor, it's probably a year and a half or 2 years where you need to worry about that. But thanks for that question. Great, thank you, Sarah. Modes. You switch in from manual to the advanced modes by holding down a button, and you'll get a double or a triple beep, and the LED indicator will double or triple flash. So it's beep 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 or beep beep beep. You get that kind of a real rapid beep sound, or the light. And Amanda is laughing at me. Thank you, Amanda. So that is telling you that it's going into one of those advanced modes: time, delivery, sound, trigger, or tilt sense. If you want to cancel one of those, just press the button quickly. I say a couple times. Most of the time, a single press will just cancel it. A double quick press is just a way of making sure that you've got that mode canceled. But usually just a single quick press will take you back into the manual mode. So those are the modes of the remote. I'm going to talk about a few applications now. And I tell you what, before I jump into those, I'm going to go over here and let's see what we got. I'm going to go through some of these documents. Bear with me for just a second, everyone. Okay, so here we are on the Pet Tutor users group, and you'll see this files section. And here are the documents in the files section. I'd be sure and check those out. There's a lot of good information there. I'm going to run through a few of these real quickly. And if you have any questions along the way, give you a chance to ask those. But you'll find a lot of answers to your questions in these tips that we put in the files section on the user group. Let's see, sleep timers. I'm going to run up the sleep timer here, and so the sleep timer is found in the sleep timer. Sorry, got different messages coming in here. The sleep timer is found in the feeder and in the remote. So there's the factory default in the feeder is if there's no activity for 15 minutes, the feeder will go to sleep, or 3 minutes for the remote. For the remote, it just a quick press, and same thing for the feeder. It'll wake up if you just press it once, and it'll come back into use. Folks have messed around with these, so the battery. If you want to extend those, it's not very often that you need to change those factory settings. Most folks leave them the same. A few people have extended them. There may be some places where you want to do that, but you are affecting the battery life. So if you force the feeder to stay on longer, those D batteries won't last as long, and the recharge on the remote won't last as long either. So it's just a trade-off you have to make if you want to extend those. But you can make them, if you have the software for the laptop, you can make those anything you want. But again, the factory default should be pretty good. And another point about the sleep timers, when you're in one of the automatic modes, the sleep timer related to that mode is disabled. So, for example, when you put the remote into the tilt sense mode, well, if the sleep timer were still active, it would cancel itself during the tilt sense mode if your dog was playing the game for 20 minutes. So both the remote and the feeder sleep timers are deactivated when you're in the tilt mode. The same thing for the sound mode. And then when you get into the timed dispense mode, because the timed dispense mode is controlled by the feeder only, the remote puts the feeder into the timed dispense. So that's like a treat every 5 seconds or one every 10 seconds. The feeder can do that on its own. Once you put it in the time dispense mode, you could take the remote and fly to Australia, for example. The remote doesn't care, or the feeder doesn't care. Once it's in time dispense mode, it's running on its own. It will not go to sleep, but the remote will. So if you put the feeder into time dispense mode, after 3 minutes, the remote will go to sleep. The feeder won't. So that's the way that the timed sleep timers work, and there's more details on those. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's a tip on the remote battery care. Read that in more detail. There's a lot of detail on how to take care of the battery that's in the remote to make it last longer, to extend your charge. So you can dig into that on your own. I won't do that here. But I do want to talk about the timed interval. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go this. This is just a work of art. This is the quick card, and this is something that Amanda insisted that we create for our users, and I think it's a really great resource. Amanda has got a new one. Amanda, can you tell me, is that are we sending that out now, or is it available if folks want to get it? Just let me know, or we'll post something on the user group, because I know people really like this. It is just a little bit bigger than a business card. Next week it will be included. Okay, so there you go. So this will start being included. Then we were out of print for a while, but we've modified it. And if you want one, just email one of us, either Amanda or Wes at smartanimaltraining.com, and we'll get one of these cards out in the mail to you, no charge. So if you didn't get one already, we'll send one out to you that will be included in the future. But it shows you, for instance, the functions on the feeder. I am going to demonstrate that in just a second. So I'll show you how these buttons, some folks don't realize you can control the volume or even the tone setting on the feeder itself. And then let's see, down here, it's a quick shortcut card. It's the quick start card. Quick start card. Is that what we call it, Amanda? Yeah, quick start. Pet Tutor quick start card. And it's in addition to the manual. So if you go to the support page, there's just a full-blown user's manual on the support page. You'll find that there. But here is just this little quick pocket-size shortcut. So I want to walk through this just a little bit. I wanted to touch on this topic. And so I'm hoping you guys can hear. I'm going to hold this close to the microphone, but I've got a Pet Tutor here, and so you can hear I'm triggering it, and that's just I'm pressing the bottom button here, like a little record, and it gives you a manual delivery. So if you're pressing the remote and nothing is happening, then go over here and push this button and make sure it's the feeder. Could be something in the remote, although it's pretty rare. But if you push the remote and you don't see anything happen, push this button. Make sure that the feeder by itself is working. It should always respond to that one. Just a quick press, and that'll tell you that the feeder is fine. And if you're having, then the problem would be maybe you've got a dead battery in the remote and you need to charge that. The other function that this button has is to actually change the tone. And the way you do that is you hold it until there is a beep, and then you can select the tone. So I'm going to do this now. It's the pitch for those of you in the music world. I'm going to hold it down. If you heard that, so I got a long beep at the beginning that told me to go in, and so you should be able to hear it. I'm playing a little song. Now when I hear a tone that I want to save, I'm going to stop pushing. There'll be a delay. There. So now I set the tone. You can choose that just if you want to change the tone. If you have multiple feeders, then it's a real advantage. Then each dog will have a more unique tone setting. So that's how you change the tone. The volume in that middle button, you just push and release real quick. There are 1, 2, 3, and a silent. There's a mute plus low, medium, and high volume. So if you want to completely mute the feeder, just press and release this button quickly, like I just demonstrated. And when you press and release and you don't hear anything, it's muted. You can test that by pushing the dispense button. Now I don't have it muted right now, so you're hearing the feeder beep. But when you get to the mute mode, just go down and press the manual button. That'll tell you, yep, I've hit the volume to mute it. And then I think no one's had any problem that I'm aware of with the power switch on and off. So you just press and release to turn it on and hold it down until you get a beep to turn it off. The power light, quick comment about the power light will blink, slow heartbeat we call it, blink to tell you that the battery is being used for power. When you plug it into the wall outlet, instead of a green flash, you'll get a green solid light. And that tells you that the Pet Tutor is now running off the AC wall adapter and not the internal battery, which is pretty handy. If the battery gets low, then it'll start flashing red. I'll just tell you, and so mileage may vary, but I did some endurance testing with the feeders. We put in a couple of D batteries, and we were able to get about 16,000 training cycles on a couple of D batteries. So they'll last a long, long time, especially if you put it on mute. You should get quite a long time on those D batteries. But you'll see this power light start to flash red. The status light will also flash red when that kibble load indicator sees that the kibble is getting low in the hopper. So that's the other reason that light will go red. So that is that's the basics on the quick start card. I'm not going to take a lot of time on the remote. You've got the card there. It's actually on, so I'm showing you the one that's on the site now, so you can go get the quick start card right now off the user group, and you could print that off, and then, like Amanda said, we'll send you a copy. If anybody wants one, send an email to us. We'll send you a copy of the new one. And then, Amanda, I guess you're going to put the new one up on the user group when we get that PDF ready to go. So just kind of a quick walkthrough. I'm not going to demonstrate these, but the manual mode is obviously just press the button, hold it down for the timer mode, and this will go into a double blink, and that tells you that you're in the timer mode, and it'll use the factory default setting of a treat every 5 seconds. And then the silent or bark mode, it's very similar to the timer mode, except it'll stop for a pre-programmed amount of time. 20 seconds is a timeout for a bark pause. And if the dog remains quiet, it'll revert back into that normal time dispense interval. If he barks, it resets this timer. So if it's been 19 seconds and he barks, well, he gets another 20 seconds. Walt, Amanda's used this a lot with her Great Dane that was rescued and had a real barking issue at the beginning. So these parameters can be changed for the bark mode if you have the software. You plug it into the laptop, you can change those. The factory defaults work pretty well, especially starting off for a barking issue. Button 2, again, a manual, a quick press. If you have a second feeder that's been paired to this remote, you can just dispense from it. The function 2, if you hold it down, goes into the sound mode, and it will trigger the feeder if it hears either your voice or a click, depending upon which mode you have that set in. So that's the sound trigger mode. The one we haven't talked about a lot, doesn't come up that often, is called it's silent mode 2 or bark mode 2, which works off the time of day triggers. And I didn't mention that. Well, we do have an internal clock that keeps track of 24-hour time in the feeder. It has to be set up, and you can enable the feeder to wake up, go into a pre-programmed program to dispense for so many cycles and then stop. And you can actually enable the bark mode. So like if the mailman shows up at 3 o'clock and causes your dog to bark and the neighbors are complaining, you could set the Pet Tutor up to begin this program at 2:45 and go until 3:15. And so that's all. It wakes itself up and runs the program and goes back to sleep. So much more sophisticated tool. A few folks have gotten into that. That's almost a whole session on its own to really go through that. So we're not going to go into the time of day triggers. It's also covered in the manual if you want to know more about that. Button 3, same thing. If you have a third feeder, quick press will fire the feeder. The most popular operation here is obviously the tilt mode. Hold it down until you get a double blink. Goes into tilt mode. You can put it inside a wobbler or another toy, or use it to physically move and trigger the feeder. The orient mode is similar, but not too many folks have used that. But if the remote is rotated through an angle of about 90 degrees, kind of like going from portrait to landscape on your phone, it'll trigger the feeder. So yeah, lots of bells and whistles inside the remote there. So that's the quick start card. Again, all this is on the Facebook users group. Quick start timed intervals. I'm going to hit, and just watch my time here. I'm going to hit the timed intervals. And this one is really relevant if you want to get in and change the settings and you've got the software. Using manual, there seems to be a long delay from, oh, I'm sorry, I missed that question. Okay, So a question here, using manual mode, seems to be a long delay from the pushing of the button until the treat is released. Can that be changed? The thing that's the fastest there is the marker signal coming from the feeder or the remote. So that should happen instantaneously. Yeah, the mechanical system, depending upon the type of treat that you have, Pamela, the type of food, thank you, Amanda. Yes, the type of food can affect how quickly it grabs it and shoves it out. So if you've got a food that's kind of slimy or a bigger kibble, the brushes may need to grab it and it takes longer to move it out. There's some things you can do like trail mixing. If you've got a semi-moist or almost a moist type treat, we fed hot dogs, string cheese. Those get kind of slimy, and so it's harder to grip, but you can counteract that by throwing in a little bit of kibble, so you get a little kibble dust on them. They get a little more grip to them. So that could be a way to speed things up a little bit. But it depends on the size of the treat. The smaller treats are usually a little quicker. Bigger treats are a little bit take a little bit longer, and then the slimy ones take a longer still. Okay, yeah, make sure the marker is on. That's the key. Is the marker? It's very important that the marker be really fast, and we've really optimized it. The marker should happen immediately. So let me jump in now to the. You can continue to ask questions, but I'm going to jump into the timed interval modes. There are 4 parameters when it seems like a simple thing, right? You're just dropping a treat, drop, drop, drop. But with Pet Tutor, we've allowed you to have a lot of flexibility on the shape of that timed interval pattern. The simplest is just it's on a fixed 5-second and drops a treat about every 5 seconds. But you can also add random variability so that it's not always exactly 5 seconds. You can have the computer actually start to increment that interval for you. So if you're doing like a duration behavior and you want that to grow automatically, you can grow that. And then the 4th parameter associated with the timed intervals is the bark pause. So if we hear a bark, how long should we wait before we deliver another treat? So those are the 4 parameters that you can change with the Pet Tutor console software. And if you have the Bluetooth, we're moving some of these features, these parameters, over to the app. So that's another advantage of having the app. Now, it does not require you to plug the remote into the laptop to change some of the parameters. And I think eventually we'll try to get all these parameters over to the app. But you can start the timed interval mode now and immediately change it on the fly from your smartphone or your tablet. Here's the screen if you have the Pet Tutor control software console. And so these are the 4 parameters that we're talking about. You enter a new one in the little boxes, little white boxes. The min and the max value, so the dispense interval can go from 5 seconds to 1800 seconds, and we can add random variation to that from 0 to 100. We can also increment, and this is in units of a quarter second. Each time it cycles, each time there's a trial, it can increment the next trial by quarter second, half second, 3/4, 1 second, whatever number you put in here. And then the bark pause tells it in terms of seconds how long to wait or to pause if there's been a bark detected. And then here are the feeder sleep and remote sleep intervals. Again, I would not change those if it were me. I just leave the sleep timers alone. Most of the time, that is quite sufficient. So let's jump right in. The timed dispense interval is the first setting is just the fixed interval. So here you put in a 5. I'll go back to the screen. So we're talking about this first block here. So we're just going to put in 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and every 5 seconds or 10 seconds, Pet Tutor will drop a treat. Typically, how long would an interval be to feed throughout the workday while I'm gone? Yeah, so that there are a lot of variables that go into that, dependence upon the size of the treat. but you could extend that to be quite a long time. I think the maximum time between a dispense interval is 30 minutes. Yeah, it's right here on the screen. So you could go, the pet tutor would deliver a treat. 30 minutes later, it'll deliver the next treat. So that's a pretty long interval, but you've got to, you guys are trainers, so you're going to have to shape that duration up to get up to 30 minutes. But you can get some very long intervals, so you could go for a long time. It's a few hundred, anywhere from a meal. I've measured some of my dogs is there may be around a couple hundred dispense cycles, 150 dispense cycles will deliver a typical meal for a medium-sized dog. So you figure out what the math is there. If you're dropping one every 30 minutes, you got 200 cycles. You're going to go more than all day. So you kind of have to play some games with how much food you want to dispense and then how long you want to make that interval. Let's go on to the next one then, the random add percent. This one just adds variability, and the way this works is you put the interval that you put in the first box. That's the lower bound, and then the percentage tells it how much to make the upper bound. So, for instance, here I put in 50% of 5. That's 2.5 seconds. So my dispense intervals are going to range from 5 seconds to as short as 5 to as long as 7.5 seconds. So that's how the random add percent works. Auto interval increment. So here, we're just adding a 1/4 second each cycle. If you put in a 1, if you put in a 2, it's going to add a 1/2 second each cycle. The bark dispense, this tells it if I've heard a bark, how long should I wait? So you can, if you're playing around with bark reduction, you can change the interval that the treats are being dispensed and the bark pause. And then you can put them all together. So you could add all those in. So you've got the fixed interval, you've got random add percent, you've got auto increment, you've got the bark pause. So you get the picture. All 4 settings come into play if you're running the bark pause. So those are the timed intervals. And if you have more questions about that, you can contact us. So there's, I didn't go into all those, but you can read those. And if you have more questions, let us know. Let's see. I'm going to do a couple applications here. Just treadmills and balance pods. This is stuff that's been on the user group. Folks who've gotten pretty clever about how they can use Pet Tutor. I thought these were pretty neat. This is a couple of different types of doggy treadmills. Either putting it at the end on a chair. It's one way to use it. Or here's one, I really like this one because it uses the crate mount on it, where you've got a wire guardrails on the treadmill, and so you could actually mount a treat bowl and feed from the side. Another application is using balance and exercise pods or discs, and so you can see Noel had this. This is really cool on 4 different of the balance pods. And then Jamie Popper has Rue standing on this disc. You can't quite see it under Rue's foot, but there's a remote that's been velcroed onto this balance pod. So when Rue moves, it triggers the feeder. So movement can trigger it. So there's some pretty cool stuff there. Just to kind of start to stretch the imagination on what you might be able to do with the unit. Now, I'm going to do a quick pause, ask if there are any questions, and then wrap up with kind of the future. Anyone else have been taking questions along the line? And let's see here. I'm going to. Okay, I've got the mics opened up. Just is there anyone that had a question? Okay, you've been pretty good asking along the way, so I'm going to mute and the future. And I'm real excited. This has been the vision for us from the beginning. Is what would happen if we took the very best that we know in behavior science and combined that with computer science. And my inspiration for this was a lot of the work that was done by Bob Bailey. I'm sorry, someone. Are there any training seminars with the Pet Tutor being offered? No, but we think that's a great idea. We do have some workshops that are kind of the nuts and bolts, kind of like what I'm going through now, but more hands-on how to use it. But if you think there's interest, we could work up something where we could help coordinate some seminars to actually do some applications with Pet Tutor. I know one person, Deb Jones, has been doing some work. She's on the user group, some agility applications with remote trainers. So that's one that I'm aware of. But I think we got more. There's a lot of opportunity with systems for training. So just to get back to this, the future is really evolving, and the future is evolving with technology and our understanding of behavior science. It's just incredible. Who knew a dog could know 1,100 nouns? Chaser, Dr. John Pilley has just done some amazing work in improving what the cognitive ability of a canine is. So that even that science is evolving from what we know. And on the computer side, things are getting smaller and more powerful. So we're taking a step in that direction by adding this Bluetooth, and at the same time, we're opening the architecture. So what's the big difference between Pet Tutor Pro and Pet Tutor Blue or the Bluetooth? Well, if you have a Pet Tutor Pro, really nothing. You just get more capabilities. So if you upgrade it, now your feeder can talk to the remote, or it can talk to a smartphone, or it can talk to our new smart clicker. So you really don't lose anything if you got a Pet Tutor Pro and upgrade it. We are coming out with a Pet Tutor Blue unit this coming in for Christmas that does not require the remote. And the main reason is, that's a piece of hardware that adds to the cost. And so that unit is not quite as, doesn't have the same price as one where you actually have the remote. But along with the Blue, so that's part of the reason for going to Blue. The other part is we can easily open the architecture. That means that people in research universities, we already have several universities, that are using Pet Tutor Pro, and they're talking to it in different ways. One of those is over our Bluetooth connection. There's some amazing work that we really can't talk about right now. It's going on in some universities that are just mind-boggling on where the canine technology is going. Using Pet Tutor and talking to the platform over Bluetooth. Third-party products. I'm sure many of you have seen the Pup Pod Kickstarter project that just successfully completed, and they're using the Pet Tutor feeder in conjunction with some of their gaming applications. And then custom applications. If you're just working in a shelter and you want to do something special in that shelter using some technology and just be able to dispense a treat, you can now do that with the Pet Tutor. And then you'll always have, what we're offering, our accessories and our apps, but we're opening so others can use the Pet Tutor. So our mission is to advance positive reinforcement, and we believe that we can do that by helping lots of folks have a better feeder to do that with. So here's just one example of what you can do as we start to move into this new technology. I'm real excited about this. We've been doing some beta testing. One of our teammates does some training with medical alert dogs. That's her business. She trains for diabetic alerting, seizure prediction, a whole range of medical applications. And she's using a battery of multiple Pet Tutors under the control of her smartphone. So here's two ways she's using it. Along the wall, the Pet Tutors are mounted on a wall hook, and you'll see a line there. That's just a leash holding the dog on they're tethered to the wall, and she's got a line of dogs, and she will take one of them out and work with them, but she has the control of the other dog. So if she wants to reinforce a downstay, or maybe there's been a distraction going on out on the floor and she wants to reinforce the dog for not reacting to that, she can hit that from her phone and it'll drop a treat right onto the dog bed. So here, you don't need any mount. You just hang it from the stainless steel handle and it drops right onto the dog bed. The other way that she's been using it is to just set the feeder on top without the crate mount, on top of crates, and it's really pretty stable with those D batteries in the bottom. They're pretty heavy, and so she'll set them up on timer, and they'll just dispense treats, and it keeps a group of dogs. These are all shelter and rescue dogs that are being trained for service work, so they can come in a little rough around the edges and a little barky, and so that's why she keeps them a group of dogs in a kenneling operation quiet from just her smartphone tablet or our smartphone. And the Apple version is in the store today, and I just got an update on the Android version now. We're into early alpha testing on the Android version, so it's coming really, really soon. But that's one way that you get a lot of flexibility. I also mentioned this changing parameters on the fly now. You can change them from your phone instead of from the computer. So with that, I'm going to open up one more time, and then we're going to wrap up. Okay, I've opened the line. And so, Pamela, I think Amanda said she has an answer for you, so you might connect with her offline. Anyone else have any questions? Anything that we have covered? Not covered. What games can we play to keep our pet interested? Oh boy, I think we're going to see a whole lot, and we've got some surprises coming for you. So if you're interested in gaming, I think the folks like at Pup Pod have some really innovative ideas, and we're bringing some tools that will allow you to have gaming applications. So you can kind of see what you can do with the wobbler. That is really fun and exciting, and I think keeps a lot of dogs entertained. And we're going to be building on that. So we're going to be able to expand what one can do with the game. And Amanda mentioned the ball. In addition to the wobbler, you can put the remote sensor into a ball, and then the dog has to go find it. So stay tuned. We'll try to do that through the user group, keep people posted about the gaming applications. But I think that's really fun. And remote gaming, too, being able to call in over the internet. So there aren't any other questions. I want to thank everyone for joining tonight, and we'll put this recording out there, put a link on the user group. Is there time for me to sing? Amanda wants to sing. I think it's good if we all left now. She's good at many things. Let's just put that.
Clear room.
Oh, you were trying to get it to end. Okay.
No.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate your time this evening. Bye-bye.